Welcome to another episode of A Fistful of Lenses. In this episode, we'll be taking a closer look at the Carl Zeiss Jena pancolar 50mm f1.8 lens, and we'll be focusing on the red MC version. This is a lens from the time when Carl Zeiss was split between East and West, with the Zeiss Jena factory being firmly behind the Iron Curtain. So can this Soviet era lens really be as good as reported? I'll be eager to find out. For this review I'll be using the Sony A7R Mark III, and I'll be using the lens to shoot video and stills, which will be shown straight out of camera without any editing or colour grading. So you can see how the lens performs in its rawest form, in real world conditions, with its character, strengths and any weaknesses undisguised. For the technically minded of you out there, the lens optical construction is 6 elements in 5 groups. The lens has 6 slightly curved aperture blades. It has a close focus of 35 cm and the lens weighs in at 219 grams. Unlike many Carl Zeiss Jena lenses from the period, it accepts 49mm filters. The lens I have here was new to buy in the shops in the mid-1970s. So what was the world like in the mid-1970s? Well, let's take a trip together down memory lane. 1975 was the year Microsoft was founded. The group Queen produced a song, Bohemian Rhapsody, and in boxing, Muhammad Ali and Smoking Joe Frazier fight the Thriller in Manila. 1975 was also the year my Uncle Tommy remarried. He was an odd-looking fellow who had unusually high eyebrows. He always looked surprised to see us. Meanwhile, behind the Iron Curtain in East Germany, Carl Zeiss were producing this excellent lens, which is the subject of this video. So let's get out there in the real world and let's see what we get with this lens. Let's begin by looking at some black and white photos taken with this old optic. Naturally, a lens from the 1970s is completely at home shooting monochrome images. And I feel with a little editing, it's perfectly capable of producing images with a nice tonal range. But it's those Zeiss colours that I'm particularly interested in. The Carl Zeiss Jena lenses I reviewed in the past had a beautiful colour signature to them. And this lens seems consistent with the other Zeiss Jena lenses that I've tested so far. More on those colours later. What about the other qualities of the lens? Well, the bokeh is beautiful. But bokeh, or bokeh if you prefer, is a very subjective subject. Very much beauty is in the eye of the beholder with regard to bokeh. But personally, I don't see anything to dislike, or any harsh or distracting quality to it. Definite strength of this lens is its sharpness, while shot at f1.8. I've used faster lenses, but those lenses are not always very usable at those faster apertures. True, sharpness is not everything, and for some subjects, a lens can be too sharp, unflattering even. This lens seems to strike a nice balance, very usable while shot at f1.8, and keeping good contrast for a lens of its age. In fact, behaves in this regard, at least, like a more modern lens. But it's those Zeiss colours that really make me a fan of this lens. I particularly like the way it renders reds, with a little extra punch but keeping a pastel-like quality. But it's not just the reds. all the primary colours are strongly represented, with natural looking yellows, vibrant greens and beautiful cobalt blues. It's apparent the Zeiss were early masters when it came to colour reproduction. So let's take one final look at some videos shot with this lens, and let's give you my final conclusions about the Carl Zeiss Jena pancolar. So what are my conclusions about the Red MC Carl Zeiss Jena pancolar? To begin with, this is the 7th Zeiss Jena lens I've reviewed on this channel. Most of the Zeiss lenses I've acquired have been cheap and easy to source. Lenses like the Tessars and Sonars. But the pancolars are a little different and usually command a higher price. The cheapest way to acquire these lenses seems to be when bought with a broken camera, and I've had a few bargains this way, including an earlier radioactive zebra version of this lens. But usually its lofty reputation brings with it an equally lofty price tag. Is that reputation justified? Well, optically, for a lens from the mid-1970s, this is a very good performer, and many rave about its sharpness while shot wide open at f1.8. Mechanically, on the other hand, many of these lenses suffer from the lubrication in the helicoid becoming gummed up over the years, making focusing difficult or even impossible. Others have had a difficult 50 years and have been neglected in some other way. But if you find one in good working order, are patient, and don't pay too much for a copy, you're in for a treat. It's a lens with a beautiful colour palette, good sharpness, but still giving your images that vintage look. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe and ring that bell. And then who knows, maybe we'll see each other out there in the real world, snapping away happily with a fistful of lenses. Till next time, bye for now.